And we're back with more News Talk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this edition of the Mark Petronis Show. Well, we know that the hearings are on, in which the government gets to explain why it imposed the Emergencies Act, what it was about that peaceful convoy protest that scared the daylights out of Justin Trudeau and his inner cabinet to the point where they would resort to basically martial law, the War Measures Act. Why did they do it anyway? Well, they've tried to answer some questions during the hearings, and sadly for them, they just look sillier by the day, including one explanation that they were getting their information watching the CBC. I mean, remember, the CBC is basically the state broadcaster. It's little more than an arm of the Liberal government's PR. And so the idea that they would be relying on the CBC, well, it's more likely that they were feeding the CBC with information, in my view, and then simply regurgitating that information to the public and then relying on the very information which they fed to the CBC for justification for doing pretty much whatever they wanted to do. We've got a clip of this. BJ Dichter joining us on Saga 960. Always great having BJ on the line because he, of course, was a key communications organizer and presenter during the convoy. And now he's watching with some level of amusement, I dare say, as the government tries to explain and justify what it did. Welcome once again, Benjamin.
Isn't it absolutely wonderful to watch? By the way, Mark, I got to say, I think you just committed fake news. Because you said that the government is trying to explain what went on. And it's very clear they're not trying to explain.
They say they
do
are.
Everything they can to avoid answering any questions like a bunch of 5-year-olds. It's hysterical.
Well, here's an example. Okay, so this is a member of parliament, a conservative Larry Brock, grilling Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister, about the government's reliance on a now redacted CBC article, which claimed that foreign funding of the convoy was behind it. So in other words, they said it was the Russians. Was it?
It's always the Russians.
Turned out not to be. Let's listen to this exchange.
Can't hear it. You have to turn the volume up. I can't hear it, Mark.
Can't hear it?
No, it's not coming through.
Okay, that's unfortunate. I can hear it. All right, let's try it again because it does bear listening to. Oh, I think I see what I did wrong. Let's try it again.
Mr. Freeland,
how's that?
You'll agree with me that the state-owned, taxpayer-funded Canadian Broadcasting Corporation reported on February the 10th, 2022, that the GoFundMe donations to the convoy protest came from donors located outside of Canada. You'd agree with that?
I don't have the report in front of me, and I haven't memorized all CBC reports, but I'm prepared to.
What a snarky comeback. Haven't memorized all CBC reports. I mean,
well, it gets better. It gets better, believe me.
Let's keep listening.
In fact, they stated that the donations came from America, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. You'd also accept that as fact?
I don't see the article before me, but you say that's what it says.
They even claimed that the convoy might be Russian funded. Do you recall that?
Again, you're reading from the article.
Yes.
Okay, so she wouldn't remember that. She would have no recollection of the reports that claimed that your convoy, the convoy you were part of, was Russian backed. I mean, I think she would know that, but she doesn't want to admit it. So she keeps saying, well, you've got the report in front of you. She just doesn't want to say it. She doesn't want to regurgitate the lies that the government was more than happy to present and peddle earlier on. Let's listen.
On March 21st, 2002, the CBC, without any explanation, without apology, without any clarity, retracted their story regarding the funding of the protest. You were aware of that?
Again, I'm not speaking for the CBC. I'm speaking for
I'm not
the
asking
Ministry
you to
of
speak for the
Finance.
CBC. I'm asking, were you informed that the CBC retracted the story, the false story about foreign funding donations to the convoy?
Again, Mr. Brock, I don't believe that the CBC is being interrogated here. I believe it's.
Do you believe this? So she's being so obtuse. She keeps punting it over. I don't speak for the CBC. They're not being, I mean, he's asking you, Chrystia Freeland, if you were aware, not whether or not CBC did this or did that, whether you were aware of what he just said.
Again, Mr. Brock, I don't believe that the CBC is being interrogated here. I believe it's the government of
Just
Canada.
answer the question, Minister Freeland. Were you aware, yes or no? It's a simple question.
I don't have the article before me, and I'm
Oh
not
my
here to answer
gosh.
questions about
Do
the
you
CBC.
believe that?
You know what else I love?
I don't have the article. Were
we're
you
supposed
aware
to-
of it? I don't have the article. So she needs, I mean, she needs the
Oh, but-
article in front of her to tell her whether she was aware of it or not.
But her preposition is the fact that we're supposed to believe that she and her government made the decision to implement martial law, and she can't remember why. What are you?
Let's listen to more of this. This is pretty good.
The Deputy Prime Minister, the most senior cabinet minister, is not prepared to accept whether or not the CBC retracted a false story?
I don't speak for the CBC, sir.
You, as the most senior cabinet minister and the deputy prime minister, relied upon that initial story from the CBC and shared your concerns with Canadians regarding terrorism funding and money.
See, now that would have been the question to ask. Rather than simply reiterate it as a statement, I think Larry should have said, did you in fact rely on CBC reports? See what she says to that. But let's listen to some more.
Laundering, your words, correct?
Let me be very clear. My principal concern when it comes to the illegal occupation and the illegal blockades is the economic harm that
Let me be very clear, Minister Freeland. Your words several times in the House referred to terrorism funding and money laundering. Are you saying you didn't use those words?
I am speaking here today, and I am talking about the central motivation of our very serious
And
actions.
I'm here to ask you questions, and I expect, unlike question period, I expect a response. So my response is, do you recall using the words terrorism funding and money laundering in the House and reporting outside the House? Yes or no, Minister Freeland?
I believe if we were in a court of law where I think you once worked, that might be called badgering the witness, Mr.
Oh my gosh. Do you believe this person? Badgering the witness.
Firstly,
They're not answer a question. She just flat out refuses to answer a question.
And they're not in a court of law. And what's interesting is there's during these hearings a few days later, Bill Blair was asked that by that NDP guy, Green, who's actually been quite solid. I give him credit, even though he didn't support the protest. And Blair said, I put this on my Twitter, quote, this, the Freedom Convoy, quote, was not a terrorist event. To be clear, Mr. Green, this was not a terrorist event. So it's only a matter of time till the knives start coming out and they start stabbing each other in the back, because she is in some serious trouble, like very serious legal constitutional.
She should be in prison. Let's listen to some more of this.
Mr. Brock.
Chair.
Yeah.
Can we allow the question to be answered?
You believe her.
Thank you. As I said, my core concern as Minister of Finance and my central justification for these very serious measures that we put in place, as was clear in my opening statement.
You're not answering the question. I'm going to move on. You're not answering the question, and I will move on.
Madam Chair, on a point of order.
The witness may not like the questions, but she's not entitled to establish her own facts and responding to an answer that is non-responsive and not relevant to the question.
I'd actually just we'll move back 20 seconds, allow you to ask you.
20 seconds? Give him at least 5 minutes.
Do you agree with me that the Deputy Director of FinTrack, Mr. McKillop, confirmed at committee that the convoy funding did not come from terrorism funding or money laundering, and the typical person who donated hundreds and thousands of dollars to the convoy came from their own resources and posed no security threat? You accept that?
What I accept, Mr. Brock, is that the
Oh
core
my God,
threat
she's
is to the
such an
Canadian
idiot.
economy, to our reputation as a trading partner and investment.
Actually, this
Oh,
is good. This is good here too. She's talking about the
Came
economy,
from their
so
own
she throws this
resources
in.
and posed no security threat. Do you accept that?
What I accept, Mr. Brock, is that the core threat was to the Canadian economy, to our reputation as a trading partner and investment destination.
Thank you
I
for the
made that clear in
non-response,
my
Minister.
opening remarks.
Okay,
and
so
that is my view.
all right, let's deal with that.
Mm.
How much of a threat was the convoy to the economy? This is new. They didn't talk about the threat to the economy when they
That's
were
right.
trying to grapple with whatever justification they could. It was always about Russian-backed white supremacists pushing the pre-U.S. Civil War Confederacy filled with Nazis, arsonists, and rapists. It was just so all of a sudden it was the economy. Yeah, I had to rescue the Canadian economy. I mean, from what I've been able to gather, you probably added to the economy. You added to the local economy in Ottawa. I mean, you helped all those truck stops along the way.
To the businesses that violated the city's order and stayed open. A couple of businesses told us specifically they made more money in a week than they did in 3 months. So yeah, we did a lot of good for the business in the area. But what's interesting about her and what you just said is, you know, she learned well from her grandfather, who was a literal propagandist for the actual Nazis, not the fictitious ones. The real Nazis. That's what her grandfather did in Ukraine. So, I mean, what do you expect her to say? She's not going to answer any questions. She's going to respond repeatedly over and over again how she's the victim and do it in a very smug way. And everything is going to be subjective. That's why she won't agree to any facts, because she's a postmodern witch and she thinks that there's my truth and your truth because she's a moron. Is that harsh enough?
One of the comments, funny you should mention that. This is from Paul Thompson. Freeland is a meth witch. He is smarter and more evil than the rest of them. Well, being smarter than Justin Trudeau is no huge.
That's possible. That's setting the bar rather low. So yeah, it's possible she's smarter than Prime Minister Blackface. But I mean, this cup of Tim Hortons coffee is smarter than Prime Minister Blackface.
All right, so you completely and utterly reject the idea that this was a threat to the economy. And the other thing, of course, is she had no proof whatsoever. She could not produce any numbers. She couldn't say, yeah, this cost $100 million to the local economy. She couldn't say any of that. I mean,
she couldn't admit to the fact that FinTrack said there was no terrorism funding. He asked her, do you agree that that's what the testimony said, word for word? She couldn't answer that question. That question's too difficult for her. You know why? Because they're screwed. She's trapped, and they know they're trapped. And any legitimate country would be looking to prosecute those people in a follow-up hearing in the next government when the next government's formed. That's what needs to happen for this country to remain being legitimate in terms of our justice system.
But just the disdain that you showed Brock during the questioning, it's the way that these people are. They're so unbelievably arrogant that it's like, I don't care what question you ask. Mm-hmm. I'm going to answer whatever question I think should be asked. Or I'll say whatever the hell I want, regardless of what your question is. I think that's what it boiled down to.
Because in their worldview, arrogance is a shield for stupidity.
Yeah, well, this committee for them is just kind of an inconvenience, and she shows nothing but disdain. She doesn't recognize the authority of anybody to ask these people questions. That's how unbelievably arrogant they are. And you really see it there.
Well, remember, remember, her philosophical underpinning is the whole world is seen as oppressor versus oppressed. She sees herself as the oppressed fighting the oppressor. So that's why she's not going to give any credence to any questions that somebody who is lower on the progressive stack from her, she's not going to give any credence to anything that they suggest or they say. They're just going to be dismissive of it as it being racist, bigoted, whatever. That's their underlying philosophy. That's why I've said many times, like with Prime Minister Blackface, he's the easiest person in the world to predict because their philosophy is so lazy and simplistic. It's easy to predict everything that they're going to do.
Benjamin Dichter joining us on Saga 960 on the Mark Petrano Show. We've been talking about the hearings, looking into an inquiry, looking into the rationale, the justification for the imposition of the Emergencies Act. So far, I've seen no explanation whatsoever. At first, it was a Russian-backed insurgency. It was arsonists. It was racists, white supremacists. Now it's a threat to the economy, but they haven't proved one iota of what they have to say. But they do have one ace in the hole, Benjamin. That is a Liberal Party connected hack overseeing the entire inquiry. So they rigged the deck from the start. But to what degree will this individual, hold the government to account over this thing? I mean, do you have any expectations, any hope whatsoever that the results of this will truly reflect the government's inability to explain or to even justify what it did?
No, absolutely not. They're going to try to sweep this under the rug like the political class always does. And unfortunately for them, that's not going to happen. They wanted Trudeau to be a global name, and they achieved that. And that's what's going to haunt them for the next several years, because building him as a not only global name, but somebody who has, communist sympathies and going in that direction of in terms of our policy and our political structure, and then bringing in martial law, this is going to torment them for years, especially as there's many people who are involved with or supportive of the Freedom Convoy who had previously been supporters of the Liberal Party. They're not going to let this fall by the wayside. And I also do think that this is where you're going to see revenge, at least is what I'm being told, from within inside the Liberal Party. Because when the squad within the Liberal Party got Justin elected as leader and really took it over and took the Paul Martin Chrétien Liberals and that whole group, which was the majority of the party, and kicked them to the side and said, now you're going to sit down and shut up and we're not going to do anything you say. Well, it's their turn to stab them in the back, to return the favor of what they did to the Liberal Party. And from what I'm understanding, that is well underway. That's why you see Prime Minister Blackface being very nervous. Remember, he said he was going to go, he had to isolate for COVID because he had COVID again. So he's going to go quarantine. And then 8 days later, it was, free Rwanda. I got to go to Rwanda now and free them. Like, it's the same strategy. I mean, I guess Jerry has run out of strategies from his playbook of how to deflect that. Once again, they're trying to get him out of the limelight and hide. But guess what? Right now, there's no convoy in the street. There's no boogeyman anymore. And people, even on the Liberal side, they're tired of the boogeyman politics, and they want to see actual leadership.
Yeah, whether they're going to get that leadership is extremely doubtful. Because I agree with you. I think Liberals are tired of Justin Trudeau. In many cases, they're just as tired of Trudeau as the Conservatives are. But they're still Jagmeet Singh, steadfastly supportive of this government, despite how much abuse he is subjected to. He doesn't seem to care all that much whether he gets yelled at now. It's just part of
no, he cares. He cares. Okay. He's listen, Jagmeet's political career is not long for this world. I'm going to predict, I'll say this now, and I might be wrong, you'll test me, but this is what I'm hearing from the inside as well. We will be in an election in the fall again, a year after the last election. Why? because amongst the trucking, I don't want to call it community, but in the trucking industry, there's a lot of Sikhs. I know a lot of Sikh truckers. And guess what? They're pissed off. They're pissed off at Jack Mead, as they call him, Sellout Singh, for because if it weren't for Jagmeet, we would be in an election already, and we would be out of this and get back to the normal life that Canada should be, where we're not all at each other's throats for identity politics. So I think what you're going to see is after the summer, election season always starts around Labor Day. You're going to see the tail end of the Conservative leadership, and I think shortly after then, you're going to see we're going to be going into an election. Because also remember, with Jack Mead, they said they had that coalition. And I told you, remember we discussed this. I said, Mark, this coalition is not going to last 6 months. And then 2 days later, if I remember correctly, Jagmeet went into a news conference, and what did he say? It's not a coalition. It's just an agreement. So in 2 days, it went from a coalition to just an agreement. They'll last the summer because the staffers are off for the summer. Everybody's, gone to their constituent's office, meaning on vacation and out of the country. And then they're going to come back to this mess, and we'll be in an election. That's what I think is going to happen.
I got to ask you about Bitcoin because, of course, you've been among those who has recommended that people hold some digital currency as part of their investment portfolio, if you will. It's not a stock. We know that it's a form of digital currency, and it has taken a serious hit. It fell down to about $18,000. Remember, this was hit a high of somewhere around 69,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Almost 70, yeah.
Almost $70,000 US. And now it at one point over the last few hours, a couple of days rather, it hit 18,000 before bouncing back. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on here? Should people, obviously somebody's panicking, Benjamin, because people are selling Bitcoin, dumping it, fearing that this thing is going to keep falling. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's really concerning when you go through a first cycle. I've gone through now a couple cycles, and so now I'm used to this pattern. You can plot the pattern of Bitcoin, and we've all been waiting for this for a little while. We thought maybe this cycle would be different because of the mass amount of attention that Bitcoin got, but no, it's the same pattern once again. When it originally had its parabolic run from just below $1,000 to $19,000, and then crashed back down to I think 3, if I'm not mistaken, and went into a bull market. It's now done exactly the same thing, because every 4 years there's a halvening. Every 4 years, the supply of Bitcoin, the rewards for miners, is cut in half. I know people, they're not used to this. Doesn't happen in traditional markets, and I'm willing to bet that a lot of this that's been sold off were two things. People who are traders who were heavily leveraged, because as you know, you can leverage Bitcoin up to 120x on some exchanges. But also, the entire tech sector is worse than Bitcoin. There are stocks in the tech sector, in the FANG stocks, that are down 50, 60, 80% from where they were last year. And the Wall Street and the financial sector tends to treat Bitcoin like a tech stock. And that's how they've been purchasing it, because it's a new asset. And they see it as something that comes from the tech sector. I wouldn't worry about it, because this is the time to buy. Look, when it was $69,000, I think you said to me too, but a lot of people told me, I wish I had bought more Bitcoin. Well, if you loved it at 69,000, then you'll love it even more at 20,000. I think it's up $2,000 in the past few hours. This is the time to buy, because remember, adjust your time horizon. If you're like somebody like, I don't know, people I know who bought at $2,000, $1,000. I know somebody who bought Bitcoin at 9 cents. For them, they're not looking at it as, oh, it's gone down. So we gotta get away from the mainstream media, how they look at stocks on CNBC, knowing nothing, and causing chaos today. Oh, the whole market's down today, and the next day, oh, the market's up when only swings 1%. It's a different way of looking at it. Again, I try to suggest to you a time horizon of 2030 after the next two halvenings. I think that's when you're going to see Bitcoin is supplanted and seeded in most countries around the world. And, El Salvador and other countries that have done that have brought it on board will be all the richer for it.
Speaking of El Salvador, there is this story. El Salvador's Bitcoin boosting president, Nayib Bukele, is asking people to be patient after the price of the cryptocurrency fell below $20,000, less than a half of what the government paid. My advice, stop looking at the graph and enjoy life. So here he is. In fact, for a while there, he was buying the dip. I don't know if he's still buying the dip but he probably is. I mean, this guy is all in. I mean, he believes that Bitcoin is for real. And so he's sticking to it. And,
well, a couple of things about El Salvador. First, he mentioned that the amount of Bitcoin that they purchased equates to roughly 0.005% of their budget, I think is what it is. So it's a small amount. But the most important thing, if I was him, I would have just responded, hey guys, 70% of our country, of our citizens, were unbanked before Bitcoin. Everyone now has a bank account. And that's the difference.
Yeah. We're looking at just the latest graph here. We see that it's up at this moment over 12%. Recently, I think it was up 14% at one time, but that's over $2,200. So it's over $20,000. But if you go back to, I would say, early November, it hit, let's see, it was at $67,000. Actually, it was $67,100. And so it's been a decline. And then there was another peak, let's see, back in April, where it hit 46, but then it's continued to a precipitous decline. And now it's down to 20,000. But we're seeing an interesting phenomenon now where people seem to be getting back into it. And I think it's going to continue to rebound. We'll have to see, but certainly some people the people who hate Bitcoin have been celebrating lately, but who knows?
Peter Schiff's talking about the price going down. Listen, also remember, if that chart you had went back to 2020, what you would see is Bitcoin's low for that year was, I think, $4,200, if I'm not mistaken. And we're at 20,000 now. So just, people cherry pick what sort of chart they want to look at, what sort of time horizon they want to look at to reinforce a narrative, which great. You know what, Peter, all the power to you. You go ahead, you do you. But for the rest of us during the Freedom Convoy, we learned, and I think the entire world learned, that there is value in having freedom money. Me personally, if it went down by 50%, I don't care, because nobody can block it. And that has significant value to me, to know that I'm completely sovereign, at least in a percentage of what I own that's in Bitcoin. And that is important. We saw how important that was earlier this year. All
right. So, and again, we've spoken about the fact that the money would never have been confiscated or frozen if it was all in Bitcoin. But what is the state of all those funds? I mean, is it in some kind of state of, I don't know, government control right now? Or
no, lawyers, escrow account. Remember that the class action lawsuit?
Oh, yes.
So it's all being held in escrow, and that's why, many people who supportive us have come together, reached out to myself and other people. We launched honkingforfreedom.org, which is an initiative to kind of take the next step. There are people who still want to help the 35 truckers who have received provincial offense charges, criminal charges, mischief. So those people are defending themselves. They need some support. There's also 2,200 tickets that were issued to truckers who were in Ottawa during the most peaceful protest in Canadian history who need some help. So, a bunch of us got together and they wanted to help build this initiative, and it is exclusively funded in Bitcoin. So if you're new to Bitcoin, you want to understand Bitcoin, and you want to try it for the first time, that's what it's there for. You want to help support our initiative and the truckers and what we want to do moving forward. Get yourself a Coinberry or Bull Bitcoin or whatever exchange account. Send a few bucks in an e-transfer. Have some fun. Convert it to Bitcoin and go to our website and see if you can donate. If you have any questions, we do a Twitter space usually on Sunday nights where they can come in and talk to myself. And there's some really good expert Bitcoiners, experienced guys who come in there, guys and girls, who will help anybody out. And we talk about freedom and Bitcoin and Prime Minister Blackface, or they call him Blackface Hitler or whatever it is going to be, just for fun. And you've been there, and it's been great. And
absolutely.
It's
can you give me 30 seconds on this agent provocateur situation? Because I know how you feel about protests. Now you feel that the country has moved beyond that, and that any ideas put forward by people who openly talk about overthrowing the country those ideas have nothing to do with the convoy, those who organize the convoy. And you have to understand that who's ever doing that is actually working against you, not with you.
There's the government right now, the Trudeau regime is desperate. They're desperate for a boogeyman, and they don't have it now. The time for protesting is over. This is now the time for celebration, because we accomplished so much with the protest. And that's why during these hearings, the government is in damage control and is afraid to answer any questions, and they don't know what to do. They're stuck. So what do they need? They need a protest so they can point to it and say, oh, hey, see, there they are again. And there's some schmuck, or a few of them, going across the country saying, posing as, what's he posing as, a cattle rancher or something like that. It's completely fraudulent. The guy is an ex-stripper, was a police auxiliary, and saying, well, we're going to go to Ottawa and we're going to overthrow the government. Do not do that. That is not, it's over. The protesting is done. The government has had its ass handed to them. It's going to be slow. It's going to take 6 months, maybe 8 months, whatever, until we get into an election and we can remove the people. But at this point, the Trudeau regime, in the eyes of most of the world, and as you know, I've been traveling for the past few months, is seen as an illegitimate government. Don't make them become legitimate again by giving them a boogeyman. If you're going to Ottawa or the Ottawa area for Canada Day, celebrate Canada Day. Celebrate James Topp walking across the country and help support him and our veterans that protected our country. And we're going to celebrate what a great country Canada has been, despite this period of the blackface years, which are quickly coming to an end. So there is no need for any further protests. And I know there are some truckers who will be driving for Canada Day, but from what I understand, they're driving to go to Ottawa to celebrate Canada Day, to hear James Topp speak, and to support him and to support the veterans. That's it.
Benjamin Dichter, thank you so much for coming on the show once again.
As always, my pleasure, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. We're going to take a brief commercial break. Back with more on News Talk Saga at 960 and the Mark Petronas Show after this.